5 Lessons to Calm Your Mind. Buddhist Wisdom for Inner Peace. In a world overflowing with noise, stimulation, and endless demands for our attention, inner peace can seem like an impossible dream. We scroll through screens that never sleep, chase goals that often leave us emptier than before, and confuse busyness with purpose. Our minds are constantly in motion, rehearsing the past, anticipating the future, and rarely resting in the quiet center of the present moment. Yet it is precisely in that center, the calm, still heart of awareness, that true peace resides. Buddhism, for over 2.5 millennia, has offered not just philosophy, but practical wisdom for calming the restless mind and returning to that center of serenity. The Buddha did not promise a life free from suffering. Instead, he offered a way to see suffering clearly, understand its causes, and release ourselves from its grip. The restless mind, with all its worries, cravings, and fears, is the primary source of that suffering. When we learn to see it with awareness rather than identify with it, we begin to step into freedom. Calming the mind, therefore, is not about forcing silence or avoiding the world. It's about transforming our relationship with thought itself. It's about learning to rest in the awareness that watches rather than in the chaos that passes through. To calm the mind, we must first see it for what it is, a tool, not a tyrant. We must learn to observe its movements without judgment, and to cultivate presence in each breath, step, and sensation. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something we create, it's something we uncover, hidden beneath layers of attachment, fear, and distraction. Each of the following lessons will guide you toward that unveiling, not through complex rituals, but through simple shifts in perception that awaken deep tranquility. These lessons are not abstract ideas. They are lived truths, grounded in practice. They invite you to slow down, to listen inwardly, to breathe consciously, and to rediscover the wisdom that has always been within you. You will see that the calm you seek is not elsewhere. It's already here, in this very moment, waiting to be remembered. The art of letting go. If you observe carefully, most of your mental turbulence comes from resistance, the refusal to accept what is, and the clinging to what was or might be. The Buddha called this tanha, craving or thirst, the insatiable desire for things to be different from how they are. The mind clings to possessions, people, outcomes, ideas, memories, even pain, and in that clinging, peace dissolves. Letting go is the foundation of a calm mind. It does not mean indifference or apathy, it means understanding impermanence so deeply that you stop fighting it. Everything changes. Every thought, emotion, body, relationship, and moment. Nothing is static. The more we accept this truth, the less we suffer when things inevitably shift. Clinging to permanence in a world of change is like trying to hold on to water. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. The first step toward letting go is awareness. Begin by noticing where your attachments live. What do you fear losing? What do you replay endlessly in your mind? Each attachment is a thread that ties your peace to something outside you. When that thing changes or disappears, as all things do, the thread pulls you into pain. Buddhist practice teaches us to look directly at these threads, not to cut them in anger, but to understand them. Awareness loosens their hold. To let go, you must see that control is an illusion. You cannot control outcomes, other people, or the future. You can only choose your attitude and actions in this moment. The mind that seeks control is a mind that fears uncertainty, yet life itself is uncertain. When you surrender to this truth, when you stop trying to force the river to flow your way, you discover an unexpected peace. You realize that life unfolds on its own rhythm and that resistance only deepens the struggle. Meditation becomes a sacred practice of letting go. Each time you sit and observe the breath, you are training yourself to release Release the thought that arises, the emotion that lingers, the judgment that surfaces. You let it come, and you let it go. Over time, this simple act rewires the mind. You begin to carry that spaciousness into daily life, into traffic, conflict, and uncertainty. You start to trust the process of release. There's a subtle joy in letting go, not because you gain something, but because you no longer need to. Imagine carrying a heavy stone your whole life, believing it was necessary for survival. When you finally drop it, the relief feels like freedom. The same is true for emotional burdens. Grudges, regrets, and expectations are mental stones. When you release them, you remember what lightness feels like. Letting go is also about forgiving yourself and others. To forgive does not mean to excuse harm, but to release the poison of resentment from your own heart. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. The Buddha's teaching on compassion begins with this release. When you forgive, you calm your own inner storm. True letting go is a lifelong practice. It's not something you do once and complete. It's something you remember again and again. You might find yourself clinging one day and letting go the next, and that's part of the journey. Awareness turns each moment of clinging into an opportunity to soften. Each breath becomes a gentle reminder that nothing needs to be held so tightly. Letting go does not empty your life. It fills it. When you stop grasping, your hands are free to receive. When you stop controlling, your heart is free to trust. And when you stop resisting, your mind is free to rest. The calm you seek has been beneath your attachments all along. The practice is not to seek calm, but to release everything that obscures it. So, as you reflect on this first lesson, take a moment to ask yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer serves me? What would it feel like to release it, just for a moment? Each small act of surrender is a doorway to peace. If this teaching speaks to you, take a deep breath, release what no longer serves you, and remember to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey toward a calmer, freer mind. The power of presence. Presence is the quiet miracle of being fully here. It is not something you create. It is what remains when you stop running from this moment. Yet in the modern world, presence has become one of the rarest experiences. We live distracted, absorbed in screens, conversations, plans, and memories. Our minds wander in 10 directions at once. We think of what we said yesterday and what we might do tomorrow, rarely stopping long enough to feel the breath, the heartbeat, the life that is pulsing through this instant. The Buddha taught that mindfulness, the complete awareness of the present moment, is the direct path to liberation, because the present is the only place where life truly exists. Everything else is an echo or a dream. To understand presence, imagine watching a sunset. The light softens, the air cools, the sky shifts from gold to crimson to violet. For a few moments, if you truly allow yourself to be there, time dissolves. You are not thinking of your tasks, your past, or your worries. You are simply seeing, breathing, existing. That is presence, but almost instantly the mind interrupts. You reach for your phone, you think about capturing the perfect photo. You start comparing this sunset to another. The moment slips away, not because it vanished, but because you left it. The mind stepped out of the present into thought. This is the essence of our suffering. We leave the only place where peace resides again and again. The present moment is deceptively simple. It is just this breath, this sound, this sensation. But because the mind is addicted to movement, it finds stillness uncomfortable. To calm the mind, you must learn to make peace with now. Every time you return to the present, you loosen the chains of fear and regret. Fear lives in the future. What might happen? What could go wrong? Regret lives in the past. What should have been? What you wish had not happened. But peace lives only here, in the space between thought and awareness. When you rest there, even for a few seconds, you touch eternity. Buddhist practice begins with the body and the breath. The breath is the bridge between the external world and the internal awareness. It anchors you to the now. When you breathe consciously, you invite the scattered mind back home. In meditation, when thoughts arise, and they always do, you gently return to the breath. Each return is an act of kindness, a reminder that you do not need to control the mind. You simply need to remember the present. The more you do this, the more you see that thoughts are like clouds drifting across a vast sky. You are not the clouds. You are the sky itself, vast, clear, unchanging. Thoughts come and go, but awareness remains. Presence is not limited to meditation. It is a way of living. Washing dishes, you can feel the warmth of the water, the texture of the soap, the rhythm of your movements. Walking, you can feel the ground beneath your feet, the breeze against your skin, the sound of life around you. Eating, you can truly taste your food, noticing how nourishment feels rather than rushing to the next bite. In each of these simple acts, the mind quiets because attention has no space for distraction. When you give your full attention to what is happening now, you stop feeding the endless commentary in your head. The result is a natural peace that needs no effort. But presence is not just about awareness of the pleasant. It also means being present with discomfort. The mind often runs from pain, emotional or physical, by escaping into distraction. Yet the only way to heal is to face what is. When you bring compassionate attention to your pain without trying to fix or resist it, something profound happens. The suffering begins to dissolve. This is because suffering is not the pain itself, but the story we build around it. Why me? This shouldn't have happened. These thoughts perpetuate the wound. When you stay present, you see pain as sensation, as energy moving through you, impermanent and alive. You stop identifying with it. Presence transforms suffering into wisdom. There is a teaching in Buddhism that says, don't seek for the truth, just cease to cherish opinions. Presence requires that same surrender. You cannot be present and opinionated at the same time. Judgment, comparison, analysis, these are forms of resistance. The moment you think, this moment should be different, you've left it. To return, you must drop the story and meet reality as it is. The Buddha often used the image of a mirror. It reflects everything without distortion, without preference. Presence is that mirror-like awareness. It does not say this is good or this is bad. It simply sees. In that seeing, peace arises spontaneously. When you are present, time loses its power. The past and future dissolve into the eternal now, and in that timelessness you experience freedom. Most people live as if they have time, but the truth is, life is only ever now. The moment you realize this, every breath becomes precious. You stop postponing happiness. You stop saying, I'll be at peace when, and instead discover that peace is already here. To be present is to awaken from the trance of time. You begin to live instead of merely existing. However, presence cannot be forced. Trying to be present is still the ego at work, a subtle form of control. True presence arises naturally when you relax your effort, when you stop trying to get somewhere. It's like floating in water. The more you struggle, the more you sink. When you stop resisting, you float. In the same way, when you stop grasping for presence, you realize it's been here all along. The mind quiets not through force, but through gentle awareness. The practice of presence also reveals the illusion of separation. When you are fully here, the boundary between you and the world dissolves. You are no longer an observer standing apart. You become the experience itself. The sound of the rain is not outside you. It is you in awareness, the smile of a stranger, the cry of a bird, the scent of the earth after rain. All are expressions of the same consciousness. In presence, there is no self and other, no inside and outside. There is only life aware of itself. This is what the Buddha called awakening, the realization that there is no separate I, only the unfolding dance of existence. Presence also teaches humility. The more aware you become, the less you feel the need to assert yourself. You begin to see that everything you cling to, identity, success, belief, is temporary. The ego feeds on time and narrative. Presence dissolves both. What remains is simplicity. You start valuing silence over noise, depth over surface, being over doing. This shift changes everything. You stop reacting to life and start responding from stillness. Problems that once seemed urgent lose their grip. Anxiety begins to fade because the future no longer defines you. In the spaciousness of now, you discover that you already have what you were chasing. The path of presence is not a straight line. You will drift away again and again, but each time you notice that you've drifted, you are already back. Awareness of distraction is itself presence. That's the paradox. You can never truly lose the present because it's all there is. You can only forget it for a while, so rather than striving to be mindful, simply remember to notice. Notice the breath, the sound, the heartbeat, the sensation of sitting. This simple noticing is enough. In that moment of noticing, thought loses power and the mind becomes transparent. There will be days when presence feels impossible, when emotions are stormy or life feels chaotic. But even then, remember that awareness is like the sky. The storm passes, but the sky remains untouched. Your awareness, your true nature, is never disturbed. You are not the content of your experience, you are the consciousness in which it arises. The more you recognize this, the less life can shake you. You become the calm center of a turning world. Presence also deepens compassion. When you are here, fully attentive, you see others more clearly. You listen without waiting to reply. You sense their emotions, their pain, their humanity. You realize that everyone you meet is also struggling to find peace within their minds. This understanding opens the heart. True compassion is born not from pity, but from presence. From seeing without judgment, from being with another as they are. When you are present, you offer the greatest gift, your full attention. In that space of attention, healing happens naturally. The Buddha once said, if you want to know the past, look at your present. It is the result. If you want to know the future, look at your present. It is the cause. Everything flows from this moment. The mind may argue that the present is insignificant, but it is the seed from which your entire life grows. How you speak, think, and act now shapes everything that follows. To live mindfully, therefore, is not a small thing. It is the foundation of peace, joy, and wisdom. When you cultivate presence, you begin to sense an underlying stillness that is always here. It is not created by thought, it is revealed when thought subsides. You might notice it between breaths, between sounds, between thoughts, a silent awareness, vast and unmoving. This stillness is the essence of who you are. When you rest in it, you are no longer seeking peace, you are peace. The external world may change. People may come and go, circumstances may rise and fall, but the stillness remains. This realization is the beginning of freedom. To live in presence is to live in gratitude. Every moment becomes a miracle because you see it without the fog of distraction. You start to notice beauty in the ordinary. The way sunlight falls through a window, the laughter of a child, the scent of tea. You realize that peace does not arrive from achievement but from attention. The more you pay attention, the richer life becomes. Gratitude is not something you cultivate. It naturally blossoms when you are awake to the present. Ultimately, presence is the end of seeking. The spiritual path, in its deepest truth, is not a journey towards something distant. It is a return to what has never been lost. You were never separated from peace. You only believed you were. The mind searches outside for what can only be found within. When you finally stop searching, when you sit quietly and feel the simplicity of being, you see that everything you were chasing, happiness, clarity, love, was always here, hidden beneath the noise of thought. That discovery is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. To practice presence, you need nothing special. Just pause, breathe, feel, listen. The world does not need to change for you to find peace. Only your attention does. Each time you come back to this moment, you are training the mind to rest in reality. Over time, that rest becomes your natural state. You no longer need constant stimulation to feel alive, because you realize that aliveness is not out there. It is the very awareness within you. To live this way is to live free. Presence is not an achievement, it's a remembrance. You are remembering what it means to be fully alive. You are remembering the simplicity that thought complicates, the peace that noise hides, the love that awareness reveals. And as you remember, your life changes, not because the world changes, but because you are finally here to meet it. Now, as you finish this reflection, take a slow, conscious breath. Feel the air enter your lungs and leave again. Notice the miracle of being aware of breathing. That awareness is presence itself. It asks for nothing and gives everything. If this teaching has reminded you of the power of being here, stay with it, breathe in its silence, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that together we can continue exploring this path towards stillness and awakening. The practice of compassion. To calm the mind is to open the heart, for one cannot exist without the other. True peace is not a private escape from the world. It is a state of being that radiates outward, touching everything around it. When the Buddha spoke of liberation, he did not speak of isolation, but of connection, a deep, living compassion that sees the suffering of all beings as one's own. The restless mind is self-centered, obsessed with I and mine, forever dividing and comparing. Compassion dissolves that wall. It expands awareness beyond the boundaries of the self and reveals that the peace we seek for ourselves is inseparable from the peace of others. To live compassionately is to live without walls. It is to see with the eyes of understanding, to feel with the heart of the world. Compassion, in the Buddhist sense, is not pity. It is not feeling sorry for others from a distance. It is the direct recognition that all beings share the same longing, the desire to be free from suffering. It arises naturally when we understand impermanence and interconnection. When we see that everyone we meet is fighting invisible battles, carrying old wounds, or searching for meaning just as we are, the heart softens. Judgment gives way to empathy, anger gives way to patience, and indifference gives way to love. Compassion is not forced. It is awakened, like a flower opening to sunlight when the conditions are right. And those conditions are awareness and presence. You cannot be truly compassionate without being fully here, without listening, without feeling. The mind often believes that compassion is weakness, that to be soft is to be vulnerable. But compassion is not softness without strength. It is strength without aggression. It requires courage to feel deeply in a world that numbs itself with distraction and cynicism. The Buddha once said that hatred never ceases by hatred, but only by love. This is not poetic idealism. It is psychological truth. When you meet anger with anger, the cycle tightens. When you meet cruelty with cruelty, darkness multiplies. But when you meet pain with understanding, you interrupt the pattern. Compassion disarms the reactive mind and turns suffering into transformation. It is not passive. It is the most radical act of all, to remain open in the face of pain. To practice compassion, we begin where we are, with ourselves. Many people find it easier to be kind to others than to themselves, yet true compassion must start within. The inner critic, the voice of self-judgment, is one of the mind's greatest sources of turmoil. It whispers that you are not enough, that you should be different, better, stronger. This voice is not truth, it is conditioning. It arises from fear and comparison, not wisdom. To calm the mind, you must learn to hold yourself as the Buddha held the world, with gentle understanding. When you fail, forgive yourself. When you suffer, comfort yourself. Speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend. Each act of inner kindness weakens the grip of self-hatred and creates space for peace to enter. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is sanity. It is the understanding that healing comes not from punishment, but from care. When you are at peace with yourself, your peace naturally extends outward. You stop projecting your pain onto others. You listen more, react less, and begin to move through the world as a presence of calm. This is why the Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." The calm mind is compassionate because it sees clearly that we are all expressions of the same life. Hurting another is, in essence, hurting oneself. As compassion deepens, your perception of others changes. You begin to see beneath behavior, beyond words, appearances, and actions. You see the causes and conditions that shape people's suffering. You realize that anger often hides fear, that cruelty hides pain, and that ignorance hides confusion. This understanding does not excuse harm, but it explains it, and in that understanding, the heart opens instead of hardening. When you see through the eyes of compassion, you no longer divide the world into good and bad. You see that everyone is doing the best they can with the awareness they have. This does not mean you allow harm or stay silent in the face of injustice. Rather, you act firmly but without hatred. Compassion acts to relieve suffering, not to punish. It seeks healing, not victory. In Buddhist tradition, compassion and wisdom are called the two wings of enlightenment. Without wisdom, compassion can become sentimentality. Without compassion, wisdom becomes cold intellect. The calm mind arises when these two wings move together. When the heart feels and the mind sees clearly, wisdom recognizes the impermanence of all things. Compassion responds to that truth with love. When you know that everyone you meet will one day age, fall ill, and die, that realization does not lead to despair. It leads to tenderness. You treat people more gently, knowing how fragile and precious this life is. You stop wasting energy on trivial conflicts. Compassion gives perspective. It teaches you what truly matters. The practice of compassion extends beyond people. It includes animals, nature, even the environment. When you see yourself as separate, you exploit. When you see yourself as connected, you care. The calm mind is one that honors all forms of life because it understands that to harm the web is to harm oneself. You start to live more consciously, to consume less, to respect more, to give rather than take. Compassion becomes not a feeling but a way of being. It shapes how you walk, speak, eat, and think. Every act, no matter how small, becomes a contribution to harmony. Meditation on compassion, often called metta bhavana, or loving-kindness meditation, is a powerful way to cultivate this state. It begins with oneself and expands outward. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. Then it extends to others. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. It moves from loved ones to strangers, then even to those we dislike, and finally, to all beings. The purpose is not to force love, but to awaken the natural wellspring of goodwill that already exists within us. Each repetition dissolves the walls of separation a little more. Over time, you begin to feel an unexplainable warmth toward life itself, a quiet reverence for all that is. That warmth is the calm of compassion. There is a paradox in compassion. When you open yourself to the suffering of the world, you might fear being overwhelmed. Yet when you truly open, you discover the opposite. The more you feel, the more spacious you become. This is because compassion is not about absorbing pain. It is about transforming it through awareness. Pain without awareness becomes despair, but pain seen with clarity becomes wisdom. The calm mind does not resist suffering. It embraces it gently, knowing that even sorrow can awaken the heart. The lotus of compassion grows from the mud of suffering. Without the mud, there is no flower. To live compassionately is to let go of the need to be right. The ego thrives on conflict, on being superior, on dividing the world into us and them. Compassion sees beyond these illusions. It does not mean agreeing with everything or tolerating injustice. It means responding without hatred. You can stand firm and still be kind. You can disagree and still respect. You can speak truth and still love. This is the essence of calm strength, a heart so grounded in understanding that it cannot be shaken by anger. Compassion also means listening, truly listening. Most people do not listen, they wait to respond. The calm mind listens with presence, without agenda. It hears not only words but the silence beneath them, the pain, the fear, the longing that language cannot express. When you listen this way, you offer healing without even speaking. The Buddha's silence was often his greatest teaching because it reflected back the truth of another's suffering without judgment. Listening becomes meditation in motion, the act of being fully present for another's existence. When compassion becomes the foundation of your life, relationships change, conflict softens, forgiveness becomes natural, and expectations fade. You begin to love people not for who you want them to be, but for who they are. You stop trying to fix others and instead offer space for them to be seen. In that space, transformation occurs naturally. The calm mind no longer clings to others for validation because it finds contentment in giving rather than receiving. The joy of compassion is in the act itself, not in recognition or reward. It is a quiet joy, like the peace of a candle that shines without asking for anything in return. To cultivate compassion, patience is essential. You cannot force the heart to open. You can only create conditions for openness. Sometimes life itself is the teacher. Suffering, when met with awareness, becomes the soil of compassion. Every heartbreak, every loss, every disappointment, they all carve deeper channels within you where understanding can flow. Pain teaches you what it means to be human. It humbles the mind and expands the heart. If you let it, your suffering will make you softer, not harder. It will turn you toward others, not away. It will teach you that beneath the surface differences, everyone is longing for the same peace. The Buddha's compassion was not limited by personal preference. He cared for the beggar and the king alike, for the murderer and the monk. His heart saw no hierarchy of worth. This universal compassion is the mark of true awakening. To see beyond identity, beyond labels, beyond stories, and to recognize the sacred in every being. When you see in this way, judgment becomes impossible. How can you condemn another when you see your own mind reflected in theirs? How can you hate when you recognize the same fear and longing that lives in you? Compassion is not something you practice. It is what you become when illusion falls away. To live with compassion in a world that often rewards hardness is a quiet act of rebellion. It requires daily courage to remain kind in the face of cruelty, to stay soft in a culture that praises aggression. But this is the strength of the calm mind. It does not depend on external approval. Compassion is its own reward. When you act with love, you are at peace, regardless of outcome. You no longer measure success by results, but by intention. Even when the world misunderstands your gentleness, you remain steady because your peace comes from within. There will be times when compassion feels impossible, when anger burns, when betrayal wounds, when pain seems too deep. In those moments, do not force yourself to forgive. Simply acknowledge the pain and hold it with awareness. Compassion begins with honesty. If you can say, "This hurts and I wish to be free of hatred," that is enough. The rest unfolds naturally. Over time, understanding replaces resentment. You realize that holding on to anger is like holding a burning coal. The first to be burned is you. To drop it is not weakness, it is liberation. Compassion frees you from the prisons your own mind builds. As your practice matures, you begin to sense compassion not as an emotion, but as a state of being. It is like the sun. It shines naturally when clouds of ego and fear are gone. You do not have to create it, you only need to uncover it. When you rest in this state, even your presence becomes healing. People feel calm around you, not because you do anything, but because your mind is at peace. Compassion radiates without words. It is the fragrance of a flower that asks nothing in return. To live a life guided by compassion is to align with the natural flow of existence. Everything in the universe moves toward harmony. Rivers flow to the sea, trees bend toward the light. When you act with compassion, you move with that flow. You stop fighting life and start dancing with it. The calm mind arises effortlessly because you are no longer in conflict with what is. You become like water, gentle yet powerful, yielding yet unstoppable. This is the wisdom of compassion. True strength is softness in motion. When you embody compassion, even small actions matter. A smile, a kind word, a moment of patience. These are ripples that travel farther than you imagine. You may never see their full effect, but that is not the point. Compassion does not seek recognition. It trusts that every act of kindness contributes to the awakening of the world. This is how the Buddha changed humanity, not through grand miracles, but through the quiet power of love lived moment by moment. Ultimately, compassion is not something you give or receive. It is the truth of your nature. When the noise of the mind subsides, when the walls of the ego crumble, compassion flows naturally. Like a river returning to the ocean, you realize that to love is not something you do. It is what you are. In that realization, the mind becomes serene, the heart becomes vast, and the world, even in its suffering, becomes luminous. Compassion is not the end of the path, it is the path itself, walked one mindful step at a time. Take a breath now. Feel it enter, feel it leave. Somewhere in that rhythm, feel the pulse of life that connects you to every being who has ever breathed. That pulse is compassion, the shared heartbeat of existence. When you breathe with awareness, you are breathing with all things. In that awareness, calm arises effortlessly. Compassion and peace are not separate. They are two names for the same stillness. If this reflection on compassion has touched your heart, carry its silence with you. And remember to subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking together on this path of awakening, peace, and understanding. The wisdom of acceptance. Acceptance is one of the purest expressions of wisdom, yet one of the hardest for the mind to understand. To the untrained mind, acceptance sounds like surrender, like passivity, like giving up on life. But to the awakened mind, acceptance is not resignation. It is the highest form of intelligence. It is the recognition that life is what it is, here and now, and that resistance only deepens suffering. When you accept, you align yourself with reality. When you resist, you fight against it. The Buddha's entire teaching rests on this simple truth. Suffering arises not from what happens, but from our refusal to accept it. Acceptance is not weakness. It is freedom from the illusion that things should be other than they are. The restless mind thrives on resistance. It wants control, certainty, and perfection. It builds endless stories about how life should unfold, about what should have been different. It argues with the past and fears the future. Yet life remains unmoved by these arguments. The rain falls whether we approve of it or not. The seasons turn without our consent. The mind believes that if it complains enough, reality will bend to its will. But this never happens. What happens instead is exhaustion, frustration, and anxiety. Acceptance cuts through this futile struggle. It is the quiet realization that peace is found not in changing the moment, but in fully allowing it to be. To accept life is to stop fighting with time. It is to stop living in the gap between what is and what should be. That gap is where all tension lives. When you collapse that gap, when you let go of the demand that the moment be different, something extraordinary happens. A silence opens. The noise of the mind softens and reality becomes vivid, alive, radiant. The present moment no longer feels like an obstacle. It becomes your home. Acceptance is the art of saying yes to life, not in blind submission, but in deep understanding that reality, in its mysterious unfolding, knows more than the mind ever could. The Buddha often compared acceptance to the earth. Whatever falls upon the earth, flowers, ashes, rain, or blood, it receives without resistance. It does not judge, it does not reject, it does not cling. In the same way, a wise mind receives all experiences, joy and sorrow, success and failure, praise and blame, with equanimity. It sees that all things arise and pass away, like clouds drifting across the sky. The sky does not hold on to one cloud or reject another, it simply remains vast and open. That vastness is acceptance. It is the spacious awareness that allows everything to come and go without becoming entangled. To cultivate acceptance, we must first see the futility of resistance. Consider how often you replay an event in your mind, wishing it had been different. Perhaps someone hurt you, or life took a turn you did not expect. The mind replays it endlessly, searching for a version that feels better. But the event has already passed. What you suffer from is not the event itself, but your mental resistance to it. You cannot change what has already happened, but you can change your relationship to it. Acceptance is that shift from fighting reality to resting in it. When you accept, the past loses its power to poison the present. This does not mean approval. Acceptance does not say, "I like what happened," or "I agree with it." It simply says, "It has already happened." That clarity opens the doorway to peace. Only when you stop arguing with what is can you see what needs to be done next. Non-acceptance blinds you to wisdom because it keeps you trapped in reaction. Acceptance restores clarity. From that clarity, action arises effortlessly, not from fear but from understanding. Sometimes acceptance means taking action to change what can be changed. Sometimes it means releasing what cannot. The difference between these two is discernment, and discernment grows only in the soil of acceptance. The practice of acceptance begins with the body. Notice how resistance feels physically. The tightening in the chest, the clenching of the jaw, the restlessness in the stomach. Resistance is tension made visible. When you breathe into these sensations without trying to change them, you are practicing acceptance. You are teaching the body that it is safe to relax, even when things are not as you wish. Over time, the body becomes a mirror of the mind's peace. The breath deepens, the muscles soften, and you begin to live more fluidly, more gracefully. Acceptance becomes embodied wisdom, not just an idea. The mind often mistakes acceptance for inaction, but in truth, it is the opposite. When you resist, you are trapped in thought, unable to respond effectively. When you accept, your response arises naturally from presence. Think of a martial artist who flows with the movement of an opponent rather than fighting against it. By yielding, they become stronger. Acceptance is that spiritual yielding. It is not defeat, it is alignment. When you align with life, you stop wasting energy on resistance, and that energy becomes available for insight, creativity, and compassion. From acceptance springs effortless action, not driven by ego, but guided by awareness. Acceptance also transforms your relationship with emotion. The mind fears unpleasant emotions and tries to avoid them through distraction or denial. But emotions, like waves, only grow stronger when resisted. When you accept an emotion fully, when you feel it without judgment, It begins to dissolve. Sadness, anger, fear, these are not enemies, they are messengers. They arise to show you where the mind is clinging, where you are fighting reality. When you greet them with openness, their message is revealed and their grip softens. Acceptance turns emotion into teacher. You begin to see that no feeling is final, no pain is permanent, and no storm lasts forever. One of the greatest barriers to acceptance is the illusion of control. The ego wants to believe it can shape life exactly as it desires, but control is built on fear. The fear that if we do not grasp tightly, everything will fall apart. Yet life does not require our control to unfold. It has been moving perfectly well long before we were born. The more you trust this, the more peaceful you become. Acceptance is the antidote to control because it restores faith in the intelligence of life. You begin to see that every experience, even the painful ones, serves a deeper purpose. The mind may not understand it in the moment, but acceptance allows the heart to rest in trust. Acceptance also requires humility. It is the recognition that the mind does not know everything. The ego resists this truth, insisting that it knows how things should be. But wisdom begins with the words, "I do not know." When you admit not knowing, you open the door to mystery. You stop forcing conclusions and allow life to reveal itself. This is why acceptance is not passive. It is deeply alert. It watches without interference, without the need to impose meaning. In that still watching, truth unfolds naturally. The calm mind sees that every moment, pleasant or unpleasant, is part of the great unfolding of awakening. Many people think they will find peace once circumstances change, once the illness passes, the relationship improves, or success arrives. But the reality is reversed. Peace comes first, and then life reflects it. Acceptance brings that peace. It teaches you to find calm amid uncertainty, not after it ends. When you accept the present moment fully, you realize that you are already whole, even with unfinished stories. You no longer postpone happiness until conditions align. The calm mind does not wait for the future to be peaceful. It becomes peace now. This is the silent revolution that acceptance brings. It ends the search. Acceptance also softens the boundaries of identity. The more you accept, the less you need to defend yourself. You stop needing to prove your worth, to win every argument, to justify every choice. You realize that being understood is less important than being at peace. When you no longer need to control how others see you, you are free. The calm mind accepts not only external life, but also the inner self, the flaws, the shadows, the contradictions. Acceptance of self is the root of all freedom. When you stop rejecting parts of yourself, you become whole. You see that everything you once judged, your fear, your doubt, your mistakes, were teachers guiding you home. The mind's resistance often hides in subtle forms: impatience, irritation, or the constant desire for something else. Notice how often the mind says, "This moment is not enough." That single belief keeps you restless. Acceptance is the radical act of declaring, "This moment is enough." Not because it is perfect, but because it is real. Reality, even when painful, is sacred. When you stop running from it, it reveals its hidden beauty. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The calm mind finds wonder in what the restless mind calls mundane. Acceptance turns life into meditation, each moment a doorway to peace. There is a deep connection between acceptance and forgiveness. To forgive is to stop demanding that the past be different. When you forgive, you accept that what happened cannot unhappen, and you release the burden of resentment. This release does not erase memory, it dissolves the poison of bitterness. Forgiveness is acceptance applied to time. It frees you from the prison of "if only." The calm mind forgives not because it forgets, but because it understands. It understands that holding on to pain keeps you bound to it. When you accept the past as it was, you reclaim the present as it is. In the face of suffering, acceptance becomes compassion. When you accept your pain, you become capable of understanding others' pain. When you stop judging your own experience, you stop judging others. Acceptance expands your heart because it removes the barrier of resistance that keeps you separate. You begin to see the world not as something to fix, but as something to love. This does not mean you stop working for change. It means you work without anger, without despair. Acceptance is the soil in which wise action grows. There is an ancient Zen saying, "Let go or be dragged." Resistance drags, acceptance releases. To let go is not to lose, but to make space. When you accept, you are no longer pulled by every emotion, no longer tossed by every wave. You rest in the stillness beneath movement, the silence beneath sound. You discover that even when life changes, something within you does not. That still presence is your true nature, awareness itself. Acceptance is the path that leads you back to that awareness. The more you accept, the closer you come to remembering who you are. To live in acceptance is to live in harmony with the flow of existence. You stop treating life as an enemy to conquer and start treating it as a teacher to listen to. Every challenge becomes a lesson in surrender. Every loss becomes a reminder of impermanence. Every joy becomes a glimpse of eternity. You begin to trust that nothing is random, that even the most painful moments are part of the tapestry of awakening. This trust does not eliminate sorrow, but it transforms it. You no longer drown in emotion. You float upon it. The waves still come, but they no longer frighten you because you know you are the ocean itself. Acceptance does not mean the end of effort. It means the end of struggle. Effort arises naturally from acceptance. Effort without anxiety, without self-condemnation. When you act from acceptance, your actions are guided by clarity, not compulsion. You do what needs to be done, then release the outcome. This is what the Bhagavad Gita calls detached action, doing without attachment to results. The Buddha expressed the same truth. Do your work with all your heart, but do not cling to the fruits. This is ultimate acceptance, the freedom to act without being bound by success or failure. Acceptance is also the doorway to gratitude. When you stop resisting life, you start appreciating it. The same ordinary moments you once overlooked become sacred. The sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the simplicity of breath. Gratitude is not a feeling you chase, it is a byproduct of acceptance. When you accept, you say yes to life, and life responds by revealing its beauty. The calm mind lives in gratitude because it no longer compares. It simply receives. Eventually, acceptance matures into serenity. You no longer fight what comes, nor cling to what goes. You flow. You realize that every experience, even the difficult ones, adds depth to your being. Acceptance becomes not an act, but your very nature. You meet joy with openness, sorrow with patience, change with grace. You live as the river lives, moving, yielding, yet always complete. This is the wisdom of acceptance, to live fully, without resistance, without fear, without demand. So as you sit with these words, take a breath and feel the simplicity of being here. Whatever is happening, pleasant or unpleasant, clear or confusing, let it be. You do not need to fix this moment. You only need to meet it. In meeting it fully, you discover that peace was never far away. It was waiting behind the wall of resistance, silent and eternal. If this reflection on acceptance has brought stillness to your mind, remain with that quiet awareness. And remember to subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking this path together toward deeper understanding, calm, and awakening. The path of stillness. There is a silence beneath all sound, a stillness beneath all motion, a vast and timeless presence that underlies every breath we take. This stillness is not the absence of life, it is life in its purest form. It is not something to be created or achieved. It is what remains when all seeking ends. The Buddha called it nirvana, not a place, but a state of awakening where the fires of desire, aversion, and ignorance are extinguished, and what remains is peace beyond understanding. To walk the path of stillness is to return to the essence of being, to rediscover the quiet center that has never been disturbed by the storms of the mind. The restless mind fears stillness because stillness reveals truth. When the mind is silent, all the illusions that sustain the ego begin to dissolve. The mind's constant movement, its plans, worries, distractions, and noise serves a hidden purpose to keep us from seeing clearly. It tells us that if we stop thinking, if we stop running, something terrible will happen. We will lose control, or our identity will vanish. In a sense, the mind is right. When stillness comes, the false self does vanish. But what disappears is only the illusion. What remains is the truth of who you are. The awareness that has been watching all along, untouched by thought or time. Stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness without boundaries. To walk this path, one must first understand that stillness is not something separate from ordinary life. You do not need to retreat to a mountain cave or a distant monastery to find it. The stillness is here, now, beneath the noise of the city, beneath the chatter of the mind, beneath even the pulse of your own heartbeat. It is the background of existence itself. But because we have been trained to focus on movement, on doing, thinking, achieving, we overlook it. The path of stillness begins when you turn attention inward, not to chase thoughts, but to rest in the space between them. That space is awareness itself. When you rest there, even briefly, you taste the infinite. In the beginning, the mind resists this rest. It grows impatient, restless, distracted. It will tell you that silence is boring, that you are wasting time, that you should be doing something more productive. These are the last defenses of the ego. The mind feeds on movement. Stillness threatens its existence. But if you persist gently, without force, something subtle begins to change. The noise grows softer, the gaps between thoughts widen, and in those gaps you begin to sense something vast, a still presence watching, untouched, eternal. That presence is not yours in the personal sense. It is universal. It is the same stillness in which stars are born and seasons change. It is the ground of being itself. Stillness is not withdrawal from life, it is intimacy with life. When the mind is quiet, perception becomes clear and direct. You see without filters. The colors of the world grow vivid, sounds become alive, each breath feels sacred. The present moment stops being a means to an end and becomes complete in itself. This is why the Buddha said that enlightenment is found not in another world, but in seeing this world rightly. When the noise of thought subsides, what remains is reality, simple, luminous, alive. Stillness does not distance you from the world. It dissolves the wall that separates you from it. You realize that you are not in life, you are life. The practice of stillness is simple, yet profoundly transformative. Sit quietly, close your eyes, or let them rest gently on the world around you. Feel your breath entering and leaving. Do not try to control it. Let it flow naturally. At first, thoughts will rise like waves, memories, worries, sensations, desires. Do not fight them. Simply watch. Every time you notice you are lost in thought, return to the awareness that noticed. That awareness is the stillness. It is not disturbed by the thoughts, it is the space in which they appear and disappear. Over time, this awareness grows stronger, and the thoughts lose their grip. They still come, but they no longer define you. You begin to rest more in the witness than in the noise. Stillness is not the absence of thought, but freedom from identification with thought. The mind may continue to produce its endless stories, but you no longer believe every story. You see them as passing clouds in the sky of consciousness. This shift is the beginning of liberation. When you identify with thought, you are tossed by every wave of emotion. When you identify with awareness, you become the ocean itself. The waves still move, but they cannot disturb your depth. That is the essence of calm. Not that storms stop coming, but that they no longer control you. Stillness is the eye of the storm, the silent center that watches all without fear. The modern world has made stillness rare, but not impossible. We fill every gap with noise, music, conversation, screens, plans. We fear silence because in silence the mind must face itself. Yet it is only in silence that healing occurs. Noise keeps the wound open. Stillness allows it to close. When you stop running, you realize that what you were running from was never as frightening as you imagined. The pain, the loneliness, the uncertainty. When met in stillness, they lose their power. Stillness does not erase suffering, but it transforms your relationship to it. You begin to see that pain is not the enemy, resistance is. In stillness, even sorrow becomes a teacher. As your practice deepens, you may notice that stillness is not confined to moments of meditation. It begins to follow you into daily life. You find it in the pauses between words, in the quiet of early morning, in the soft rhythm of walking. You begin to listen more deeply, not only to others, but to life itself. Decisions arise more clearly, reactions soften, the need to rush fades. You begin to live from the center rather than the surface. The calm mind is not one that avoids life's chaos, but one that rests in stillness amid it. This stillness becomes your true home, unshakable, ever present. Stillness also reveals the illusion of separation. When the mind is silent, the sense of me and you, this and that, begins to dissolve. You realize that everything arises from the same source. The trees, the wind, the stars, and your own breath, all are expressions of one still awareness. In this recognition, compassion blossoms effortlessly. You cannot harm another when you see no other to harm. You cannot cling to possessions when you see that nothing truly belongs to anyone. Stillness reveals unity, and unity brings peace. This is why the great masters always spoke of oneness not as a belief, but as a direct experience born from silence. Stillness also brings clarity about impermanence. When you rest deeply in awareness, you see that everything that moves, thoughts, emotions, sensations, even the body, is temporary. Only the still awareness remains unchanged. This realization dissolves fear. You no longer cling desperately to what will inevitably pass. You appreciate it fully, love it deeply, but hold it lightly. You know that everything returns to the same stillness from which it came. Death, too, loses its terror, for it is simply the return to what you have touched in meditation, the infinite silence that is beyond birth and death. The calm mind does not fear the end because it has already touched the timeless. Walking the path of stillness does not make life easier, but it makes it clearer. Challenges still come, yet you meet them from a different place, not from reactivity, but from centeredness. You begin to see that stillness is not fragile, it is indestructible. The world may shake, but the awareness that watches remains untouched. The more you trust that awareness, the more unshakable you become. This is true strength, the quiet strength that does not depend on circumstances. It does not boast, it does not conquer, it simply endures, radiant and unmoving. Stillness also deepens wisdom. When the mind quiets, intuition arises naturally. Insights appear not as forced thoughts, but as gentle revelations. You begin to sense what is right without analysis. The Buddha called this prajna, the wisdom that arises from direct seeing. It is not learned, it is remembered. Stillness is the teacher. In its silence, everything becomes clear. You no longer need to chase answers. You see that every question dissolves when faced with awareness itself. The calm mind stops seeking because it realizes it is already home. There will be moments when stillness feels distant, when the mind is noisy, when emotions surge, when the world feels too heavy. These are not failures, they are part of the practice. Stillness is not something you lose. It is something you forget. Even in the loudest storm, it remains quietly waiting. Remember that awareness is never absent, only unnoticed. Each time you pause, breathe, and return, you are remembering. Over time, remembering becomes natural, and life becomes meditation. Not something you do, but something you are. In the practice of stillness, patience is essential. The modern mind wants quick results, but stillness unfolds in its own rhythm. It cannot be rushed. Every moment of restlessness is part of the purification process. Each time you return to awareness, you strengthen the muscles of presence. Gradually, the noise loses its authority. You no longer fear thought, you see through it. This is liberation, not escaping the mind, but knowing that you are not the mind. Stillness reveals that freedom is not the absence of noise, but the recognition that you were never bound by it. Stillness also brings humility. The more you rest in awareness, the less you identify as the doer. You begin to see that life lives itself. The breath breathes, the heart beats, the earth spins. You are part of this vast unfolding, not separate from it. This realization dissolves arrogance and brings deep peace. You no longer feel the need to control everything. You act when action arises. You rest when rest calls. And in both, you remain at peace. Stillness teaches that life does not need your interference to be whole. As stillness deepens, joy arises. Not the fleeting joy of pleasure, but the quiet joy of being. This joy is subtle, steady, and unconditional. It does not depend on success or comfort. It springs from the simple recognition that existence itself is a miracle. You find yourself smiling for no reason, grateful for no specific cause, content in the midst of uncertainty. This is the natural fragrance of stillness. The calm mind radiates it effortlessly, touching all who come near. You no longer chase happiness. Happiness begins to chase you. Eventually, stillness becomes not just something you experience, but something you embody. Your presence itself becomes a space of peace. People feel calmer around you, animals trust you, nature seems to respond to you. This is not magic, it is resonance. The stillness within you aligns with the stillness in all things. You are no longer in opposition to life. You move with its rhythm. Every step, every word, every breath becomes meditation in motion. This is living enlightenment, not escape from the world, but harmony with it. To walk the path of stillness is to rediscover your true nature. Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the fluctuations of emotion, beneath even the sensations of the body, there is a presence, silent, watching, timeless. That presence is what you have been seeking in every experience, in every achievement, in every relationship. It has always been here. All spiritual practice is a circle that begins and ends in that realization. The mind looks outward for peace, but peace is what you are. Stillness is not found, it is remembered. When you live from this awareness, fear loses its hold. You stop clinging to what is temporary because you know that the essence of life cannot be lost. You stop searching for meaning because you see that being itself is meaning. You stop seeking love because you realize you are love. Not as emotion, but as the pure radiance of awareness that includes all. This is the ultimate calm, not the calm that comes and goes, but the eternal silence that holds all movement. The path of stillness ends where it began, in the heart of now. Take a moment now to pause. Feel the air on your skin, the subtle beating of your heart, the gentle rhythm of your breath. Beneath it all, sense the silence. The vast, timeless stillness that has been here before thought, before fear, before desire. That stillness is you. Rest there and let life unfold as it will. You do not need to chase anything. You have arrived. If this reflection on stillness has helped you find even a glimpse of inner peace, breathe in its quiet truth. And remember to subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking together on this path of awareness, calm, and awakening.